Welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. On Mondays, you will receive direct therapeutic support from a licensed therapist or professional connected to the mental health field. They will provide therapeutic and educational resources to help you have a healthier relationship with your family members. On Wednesdays, you will receive direct tips and resources to help you get through the stuck places that prevent many people from having the relationships with their families and significant others that they desire. On Fridays, we want you to visit our blog, which can be found at www.blackmftmatters.com, which holds additional resources and action steps that you can begin implementing immediately to improve your relationships. This is necessary because we love that you are listening, but we want you to take action too. While you are there, please grab our A to Z Relationship Bootcamp and be provided with the skills you need to immediately communicate better within your relationships. Please note that while the therapists on podcasts are therapists, they do not serve as your therapist unless you have signed a confidential agreement with them confirming that relationship. Thank you in advance for listening, and we hope you are inspired. All right, it's time for the show. Here is your host, Dr. Connie Omari.
Hey, welcome to the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Today's guest is Jhane Johnson. Hi, Jhane.
Hello.
How are you?
I am excellent.
Fantastic. Let me tell our guest a little bit about you. Jhane Johnson is a native of Durham, North Carolina. Reflecting on Jhane's childhood, Jhane knows she was battling many things internally that prevented her from being sensitive to others' needs. Jhane wishes she would have known all the things that are possible in having a mentor or therapist and not seeing it as something negative. Having that voice of reason and helpful guidance would have helped Jhane navigate much easier. This is one of the many reasons that she was excited about starting her own private practice. Immediately after Jhane graduated from North Carolina A&T, Jhane was accepted into an accelerated master's program at the University of South Carolina. Jhane decided to be a child and family therapist to help intervene in families where children are fighting internal battles, struggling to have healthy relationships with loved ones and peers. Jhane believes using her personal experiences combined with her master's level education in therapy and counseling that she can truly prevent young people from spiraling out of control and can help all people live a better life. Welcome, Jhane. Thank you so much for the awesome work that you're doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you became a therapist?
Yes, I actually did try therapy, I think once in my childhood, and it was not a good experience at all. And
tell us why.
The lady was just, I felt like she was very judgmental. I didn't feel very heard. And mind you, I'm a child, so most of the time, kids don't feel heard anyway. But the whole point was to have that opportunity, and I felt robbed of it, even though this was her job to listen. So I figured I wanted to be able to do her job the way I felt like it should have been done.
Exactly. Well, let me just ask the elephant in the room and the reason why I started this podcast, and that is, was your therapist Black?
Yes, my therapist was Black.
No!
Yes, she was Black.
Okay.
That's kind of, I hate to ruin that.
That's true. Yeah, just because you're Black doesn't mean you're gonna get it all the time.
Right. I also think it comes from being passionate about what you do.
Yeah.
If you're not really passionate about it or not in it for the right reasons, I also think it'll show in your performance.
Absolutely. Well, and I only said that because when I was growing up, I didn't know any Black therapists. I barely knew what a therapist was, but I definitely didn't know any Black therapist. So I think it's interesting that you were fortunate to have one, but then you didn't have a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
So.
Well, you're a great therapist, I know. So maybe that was a way to just introduce you, like you said, into helping, knowing how to do her job even better.
Yeah, definitely. What not to do.
What not to do. There we go. What not to do. All right. So our topic today is going to be about the impact of trauma on relationships. First of all, what exactly is trauma for our listeners who might not have a clear understanding of what that means?
Trauma is any type of adversity or uncomfortable situation that you had to face or one had to face and they didn't have any control over it. And this can be something you personally experienced, or it can be something that you witnessed with, family members. But any uncomfortable adversity that was unwarranted and uncontrollable from your perspective can be how you define trauma for me.
Well, I think that's a great definition. As someone who works with a lot of trauma clients myself, I think a lot of times we associate the war with trauma. Not saying that it's not, but we don't realize that trauma is so much more beyond people who go to war. Right. Can you give us some examples?
Definitely. So trauma can be natural disasters. You can have trauma from a parent passing away. You can have trauma from being bullied. I mean, it's so many things. It can be person specific. It can be witnessing a shooting. If you're from violent neighborhoods, seeing a dead body. It doesn't have to be war. And most people have associated more specifically PTSD with the war. And that's very closed-minded perspective, because everyone can experience trauma at any given time.
I would go so far as to say everybody probably has, at least by the time they died, have experienced something traumatic.
Yes.
Would you agree? Or definitely a lot more than people are often comfortable talking about.
I definitely agree. And I do feel like even if you have experienced trauma, there's some people who don't even know they have.
Exactly. And that's where it's really dangerous. And that kind of goes into what my next question was going to be. What do you wish Black families knew about the impact of trauma and their relationships?
I wish Black families knew that trauma was something that needs to be processed through. I think a lot of Black families have this expectation of get over it, or you gotta be strong, or let that go, or they want you to brush things off and kind of have this demeanor as if nothing affects you, and not allowing you to process things or feel your feelings. I think Black families definitely shun away from that, especially when it comes to Black men and boys.
Can you tell me more?
Yeah, so I think that the persona that Black people have to be strong is already a narrative, but more specifically men, because I guess they're perceived to be the protector. And if you're protecting people, you can't be crying. You can't be weak. You can't be scared. How can you protect me if you're fearful, or if you're nervous, or feeling like they have to take the brunt of things when I guess there is difficulty in the household, the man is expected to take care of it. So it's almost like frowned upon for a man to have trauma or be able to process it. So I think in their relationships, that avoidance of their feelings or that avoidance of being vulnerable can affect how they're able to love a woman, or how they're even able to be good friends or good fathers.
That's so true, because when you think about things that men typically do to socialize, it doesn't really require a lot of intimacy. Or intimacy, I guess, in the way I think of it. Like, women, pre-COVID, when we would socialize and stuff, we'd go out to drink or maybe go dinner or something like that. But men, they typically play ball and things like that. So even they can be really good friends, but not really communicating that much. I don't know.
I agree with you, because most of their activities are more like, talking is really not a thing. It's more of action, like you said, playing ball or golf or drinking beer. It's just kind of like let's just chill and hang out. We don't have to talk. You know, how have you been? That's probably not happening. It's more like, what did you think of the game? I think that is definitely true, where a lot of times they're not really in settings to have conversations. Like that.
What types of messages do you think we give our children about even, you know, and I guess one of the things that comes to mind is I have a girl and a boy. And I noticed that if my daughter is crying, right, it's easier for the adults around her to say, to cater to her. But if my son cries, it's more like, hey, you know, toughen up, you know, or you got to be a man. I feel like those are messages that are already being ingrained in our children. Do you see that those same type of patterns in your practice?
I do. I feel like parents don't want. There's two things that I see in practice. The first thing, like you were saying, as far as gender roles, I think that parents don't want their son to be soft. Because if you're soft, people are probably gonna, you know, pick on you more or push you around, and so they're like, you got to be tough, you got to be strong. I don't want anything to happen to you. Then on the other side, I see parents tuning out emotions from their kids because they don't want people to view their child as having something being wrong with their child. Parents, in my opinion, can have sometimes I feel like parents can have a tendency to be a little too stuck in their ego. And if something's wrong with their child, parents think it as, well, something must be wrong with me. I didn't do something right as a parent if my child can't handle stress, or if my child is the one crying, or my child is the one always freaking out, or my child is the one always doing this or that. So I feel like a lot of times parents want to suit their kid up to set a good impression of them.
I'm wondering what you think that might mean for the parent and their trauma.
Exactly. I feel like any parents who has thoroughly been able to work through their trauma and their own issues understand the importance of allowing their child to do certain things. I think parents who have not done that, you see them projecting onto their children for sure. And it becomes one of those things where it's generational curses or generational trauma where you're passing that down.
You mentioned generationally. Where do you think the trauma, I guess, I won't say started, but what do you think our history has done in terms of desensitizing our community from traumatic experiences?
You know, this can go back hundreds of years, way before my time, but I think women have endured a lot of concerns as it pertains to being left alone, being unprotected, and hurt. I think that women over time, as far back as slavery, you know, with us having to be raped and ripped apart from our families. I think women have had to really endure so much pain. And I think it comes down to the point where it's like, okay, we went from being sad and defeated, and I kind of feel like it evolved into being strong and independent, to going into being angry and mad. Like just over time, having to constantly endure the same type of mistreatment in a different fashion, but pretty much the same message. I think it has evoked a certain type of Black woman over time. And a lot of times when there are single mothers, that same feeling just gets passed down onto their kids, and so on and so forth, until somebody decides they want to break that.
Absolutely. Well, what advice would you give someone who wanted to break that cycle but was still in a community or a setting where they didn't have access to, or no training or no resources really to help them get into therapy?
At that point, that is when I bring in my favorite word, resilient.
I love it.
Because at that point, resilience is being able to withstand anything. So even though you don't have the resources, even though you don't have the help, you don't have the role models, you're not in the best environment, you're able to overcome a very difficult situation, or anywhere where all odds are against you, and you say, but I will and I can. That is the resilience. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, where do I start? And honestly, the starting is just the fact that you even can make the statement. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to actually have something in front of you to say, okay, this is step one, this is step two. It starts from inside. You have to just genuinely want better for yourself.
Love it.
So that would be definitely my advice.
Awesome. Are there any resources that you think might be available for someone who is recognizing they had a traumatic event, they know that it's affecting their relationships, but they don't know, that's all they know? Like, they've made the first step, as you said, by acknowledging the resilience. What resources can they tap into to kind of start working on it?
Well, definitely the most obvious would be therapy. There are plenty of online, now that we're in the COVID situation, online options where people can utilize therapy. And I think several insurance companies will cover someone being able to receive therapy, at least outpatient therapy, which is the most basic. Realizing that there are people who are available to help you through this, because we don't expect anyone to just have it all together. So therapy gives you that sense of understanding where someone is able to take that jumbled up mess in your mind and lay it out in a very clear, concise way where you can understand it and you're able to work through it. And I also think that any type of community or like support system, like groups or any type of community networking, I think works as well. Just surrounding yourself with other like-minded people who are positive and who are trying to go somewhere, because a lot of times our circle can hinder us from being our better selves.
Yes.
So
just because they're your skin folk don't mean they're your kin folk.
Exactly.
Yes. Is there a common myth about trauma in relationships that you like to debunk?
Well, I don't know if this is a myth, but it's something I hear women saying all the time, or people in general, but I'll say women. I don't mean to beat the ladies up, but all men are trash. All men are just trash. Dating these days sucks. You know, nobody is faithful, and just kind of like just writing off the world.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely a huge trend that I see as it pertains to relationships and trauma. So can I kind of expand on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Please.
So I kind of thought in my head sometimes when people are dating, it's almost like they allow their trauma to take a front seat and let that be their determining factor for who they will date, first of all. And once they're in a relationship, how they carry themselves. I think the trauma is always the leader. If you haven't worked through it, your trauma is definitely steering you through. So I think with trauma, as far as who you attract, I think your trauma is always going to want to be fed by your partner. If you're not healed, I think if you have experienced a lot of violence growing up, or you've experienced you've witnessed a lot of domestic violence, and you begin to almost be attracted to men who see that fear in you. And then you're in those domestic violence relationships, or if you had no father figure or anything, and you're looking for a man to fill the void. Now you're constantly looking for someone to love you the way you wish you were loved, and that's not good if you're searching for a relationship based on trauma. And even though it's subconscious, it definitely happens every day. And then even let's say you're dating someone who's the exact opposite. They're nothing like your trauma. They're not going to hit on you. They're not going to take advantage of you. They're not going to try to manipulate you. If this is a good man, then your trauma comes into play when you're questioning it. To say, well, why are you doing this? Or what did you do wrong? And now you're just trying to make up for it. What do I have to do in return with you being so good to me? Well, you're doing good now, but how long are you going to keep this up? You know, now you're pushing that person away because your trauma's not even allowing you to accept something that's not going to hurt you. So becoming too comfortable in your trauma, anything else outside of that, unfamiliar, is almost scary, even though it should be the opposite. You're scared of something good because it's the unknown. So we fear the unknown. And if you're used to constant trauma or toxicity or volatile relationships, anything that's not that, it's almost like, what is going on? You know, like, what are you doing? And questioning, like, why does this person even want me? You know, things like that. And that's always going to ruin relationships.
I've had a client go so far as to ask me if a man wasn't hitting her, then that means he couldn't possibly love her, because that's a sign of not affection, but a sign of, you know, him loving her.
He cares so much.
She believed that so much.
He got this mad at me, and this is what he did.
Yeah.
That to me kind of goes hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier. Men are really only granted one emotion, which is anger.
Anger.
So
tell
it's
us
almost
more.
like this is the only emotion men are allowed to have. So if he loves me, he needs to get angry. You know, if he cares about me, he needs to get angry. You know, if he's jealous, he needs to get angry. It's like the other emotions, no, he can't do that, because, you know, why would he do that? That's not what men do. Yeah. So the anger part is like, well, this has to happen, right? Because this is what men get to do. And that's why everything just gets all jumbled up, because we've already put that narrative out there that men cannot have other emotions.
Very good. Good insight. Thank you for that. All right. Well, we've come to a part in the show now that's called What's Good. And What's Good is a simple part of the show where I give a hypothetical situation and I am going to ask your feedback on what should happen. All right. Okay. So meet Tasha. Tasha has 3 children with 3 different fathers. Her oldest child's father is currently incarcerated. Her middle child's father has been murdered 3 years previously. She is now in a relationship with her baby's father. Her baby's father is generally a good man who keeps a job, but does use drugs and spends a lot of their money to sustain his habit. As a result, when he's under the influence, he beats Janet. How would you suggest she reach out to get help or be resilient in such difficulties?
Well, her name is Tasha.
I know. I went from Tasha to Janet, didn't I? I couldn't decide which one Tasha, I wanted. I'm gonna go with her. It's Tasha Janet.
Tasha, middle name Janet. Got it. All right.
There we go.
I think the first step is the children, herself and the children, thinking about safety of the situation. Jail, drugs, it's a cycle where she's exposing her kids to this. And I think that she would have to realize, this is not what I want for my kids. I'm looking at all the men I've reproduced with, and do I really want that to trickle down into my kids? The first step for me, I think, is confronting him. I think confrontation is always the best answer. And if this is a man she's currently with, confronting him about her concerns and encouraging some sort of rehabilitation or encouraging some sort of couples therapy that can encourage him to ultimately stop. But I wouldn't say just ghost him. That would not be my first instinct. My instinct would be to try to help him. And then
I am so glad you said that. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to interfere here because Well, and the only reason why is because I'm a big advocate against domestic violence and things like that. But you brought up a very good point, and that is our Black men have been conditioned to only be able to respond in anger. And that's trauma as well. So in many ways, he's being traumatized in the same capacity as the Black woman who's getting beaten is traumatized. Because when I have worked with physically abusive men, they're not happy with themselves doing that. Like you don't come from a space of fullness when you exploit and take advantage and hurt other people. And when you throw out the baby with the bathwater, you know, how does that person get rehabilitated? How does that person get hit? How do we break the cycle so that he doesn't turn around and do it to somebody else? That doesn't mean be a doormat and sit here and keep your butt beat, but there are alternative ways of looking at it, and I'm glad you brought that up.
And I think that just leaving him only provides the opportunity for him to do it to another woman. Helping him allows him to see like, wow, she's not going to just leave, or she's not judging me, she doesn't hate me. We have to uplift one another. And just saying, oh, this person is crazy, I gotta go, how are you helping them? You're only going to put them in a place to do it to somebody else. So what cycle are you breaking? And even still, if you left, that doesn't make him no longer the father of your child. So it should be better for you to try to get him some help so he can be a better father instead of being the same father but just separate from you.
And I think I want to make sure that it's clear, and I know this is not what you're saying, but I want to make sure this is clear that people know that we're not encouraging them being safe. So just for clarification purpose, safety first, you know, before we can actually take the first step to help someone.
And as far as the abuse portion of it, I definitely do feel like making things documented, being able to communicate with the courts what's taking place, is always important, because CYA, you need to make sure that anything that's happening, especially when kids are involved, there is documentation or reports about it. And that's one of those things where it's like, listen, I don't want you to get in trouble, but I got to do what I have to do for my kids. So it's not, you have to be held accountable for your actions. So I definitely think making sure the courts or legal system is involved to some degree helps. And then even still with that, they often push men to do some type of program or, you know, some type of rehabilitation for anger management or something. So if you have it reported, then most of the time, not only is it enforced, but you can also be his encourager to say, hey, this is what I think we should do because I want you to be better.
Right. And and I just want to add one more tidbit to that too. You know, a lot of times what we don't do is we don't report it, like you said. And what happens is he relies on the secrecy to continue to be able to beat you. But if you expose his behind, you know, I'm talking about tell the court, tell his mama, you know, I mean, don't put it on Facebook or anything, but you know what I mean? Like people who can have some type of influence in this person's life, that's a big barrier. That's a big resource to help eliminate that.
Yes, problem. And reporting is important as well, because some people view silence as consent. So, I mean, if you don't say anything or you're not reporting it, he may think, oh, she's not really that mad, or I didn't really hurt her, or, you know, she'll get over it. But being able to say, no, this is not okay, is you saying, is you not giving that consent. So
absolutely.
Men and women both need to understand there are always going to be consequences for your actions, especially when you're physically assaulting somebody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jhane, you brought some amazing insights to our show today. I am very, very grateful that you came and that you talked with my audience. Can you tell my audience where they can find you if they wanted to work with you or see what you're doing in the community?
Yes, I would love to. So on Instagram, I get confused with a lot of pages because my Instagram name is very similar to others, but it's going to be the @ sign and then Black, BLACK, female, FEMALE, therapist, THERAPIST. And it's all together. It's not any spaces or underscores, @ Black Female Therapist. And I do have my own private practice agency called Pivotal Point Solution. And pivotal point is basically to help people reach a pivotal point in their lives. You no longer want to go down this path. So you can always go to my Instagram page, and the website is in my bio. I have the link there where you can schedule an appointment for an assessment for either life coaching or just therapy in general.
Fantastic. Jhane, I'm also going to highlight both of those locations in the show notes so they can just click on the website to find them. All right. Well, thank you again for joining the show. It was amazing having you here today, and I hope you have a wonderful
You too. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Black Marriage and Family Therapy Matters podcast, where we connect Black families to Black therapists. Since you've listened all the way through, come on in and join the family. If you haven't done so yet, please join our free community where we offer weekly trainings and monthly giveaways. We can be found on Facebook under the Black Marriage and Families Matter Facebook group. And since you're serious about joining our family, we also invite you to join our All In campaign, which signifies your commitment to go all in, not only for yourself, but in helping us reach more people by downloading this podcast wherever you are listening to it, leaving us a review, and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This really helps us reach more people and change more lives. After all, Dr. Martin Luther King once said, we can all get more done together than we can apart. With that said, I want to encourage you to share this episode with just 3 other people who you think might also benefit from our community and what we are offering, with the hopes that all of you can join our All In campaign. When you're done, simply click the link All In campaign in the bio and receive a free copy of my course entitled Goodbye Toxicity, which is valued at $297. This course will help you to work through some of the difficult experiences that arise in most of our relationships, and it's completely free to you with your commitment to join our All In campaign. We look forward to connecting with you every Monday and Wednesday. Thanks for listening.